In the year 1815, the fashionable streets of Bath bustled with activity. Ladies promenaded in their finest gowns, parasols twirling above them, while gentlemen tipped their hats in courteous acknowledgment. Among this assembly of refinement and frivolity was Miss Charlotte Willoughby, a young lady of considerable fortune and even greater charm. Charlotte had accompanied her elder brother, Mr. James Willoughby, to Bath, ostensibly to take the waters for his health, though it was whispered among their acquaintances that the true purpose of their visit was to expand their social circle. As fate would have it, Mr. Henry Ashworth, a gentleman of equal wealth but a decidedly reserved temperament, arrived in Bath during the same season. Tall and handsome, with an air of quiet intelligence, Mr. Ashworth quickly became the subject of much speculation among the ladies of Bath. Yet, his demeanor remained aloof, and his attentions scant. It was during a concert at the Assembly Rooms that Mr. Ashworth first observed Miss Willoughby. She sat beside her brother, her golden curls catching the candlelight, her laughter bright and unguarded. To Mr. Ashworth, unaccustomed to such unrestrained joy, she appeared the very picture of liveliness, and perhaps, he thought, a touch of impropriety. His initial impression, formed by her easy familiarity with her male companion, was that she was betrothed to the gentleman by her side. A pity, he mused to himself, feeling a pang of regret he did not care to examine too closely. Nevertheless, he found his eyes drawn to her throughout the evening, and when their gazes met, her warm smile disarmed him completely. In the days that followed, Mr. Ashworth encountered Miss Willoughby and her brother on several occasions, at the Pump Room, in the Royal Crescent, and even during a brisk walk on Beechen Cliff. Charlotte, for her part, found Mr. Ashworth's reserved nature intriguing, and was determined to engage him in conversation. Though their exchanges were brief, she noted with pleasure the way his eyes softened when he addressed her, and she began to suspect that his initial coolness masked a deeper regard. Unbeknownst to her, Mr. Ashworth's admiration grew with every meeting. Yet, constrained by his belief in her prior attachment, he resolved to suppress his feelings. Charlotte, sensing his restraint but unaware of its cause, decided to take matters into her own hands. During a chance encounter at Sydney Gardens, she boldly invited him to join her and her brother for a game of cards that evening. Mr. Ashworth accepted, albeit with some trepidation. The evening began pleasantly enough, with laughter and light-hearted banter. Yet, as Charlotte's attentions toward him grew more pointed, Mr. Ashworth's unease deepened. Finally, unable to bear the situation any longer, he took her aside under the pretext of fetching a refreshment. "Miss Willoughby," he began, his tone gentle but firm, "I fear I must speak plainly. While I am deeply flattered by your kindness, I cannot in good conscience encourage your regard. Your fiancé, Mr. Willoughby, is a fine gentleman, and I would not wish to disrupt your happiness." Charlotte stared at him, astonished. Then, as understanding dawned, she burst into laughter so genuine and unrestrained that Mr. Ashworth could not help but smile, albeit in confusion. "Mr. Ashworth," she said at last, her eyes sparkling with mirth, "James is my brother, not my fiancé. I am as unattached as one could possibly be." For a moment, Mr. Ashworth could only stare at her, his thoughts a whirlwind of relief and elation. Then, with uncharacteristic boldness, he reached for her hand. "Miss Willoughby," he said, his voice low and earnest, "if that is the case, then I must confess I am hopelessly, irretrievably in love with you." Charlotte's smile softened, her cheeks flushing a delicate pink. "And I with you, Mr. Ashworth?" With a tenderness that belied the strength of his feelings, he drew her closer and kissed her, their shared joy rendering the bustling world of Bath silent and distant. In that moment, they belonged only to each other, and the promise of their future together shone brighter than all the chandeliers in the Assembly Rooms. From that day forward, Mr. Ashworth's reserved demeanor gave way to a warmth known only to those who have loved and been loved in return. And as for Miss Willoughby, her liveliness remained undimmed, now accompanied by the steady support of a man who cherished her beyond measure. Together, they transformed their chance encounter in Bath into a story of enduring love, a tale that would be recounted with smiles and sighs for generations to come.